the savings accounts are now between 1/10 and 800% for the savings accounts. The checking accounts have not changed. So for cash in the bank, the best investment at this time is still the IntraFi network, which is at 0.8%. In the middle of July, we did move $4 million from that account into the Pliget account. On July 15th, the rates that were available ranged from 2.7 to 3.5. They are whole percentages, not tenths of percents. So it is 4 to 5 times what we were earning, with the investments that were sitting at Tompkins.
How does that interest work for Pliget? Does it just accrue in the account?
It will not post until maturity.
Oh,
So
okay.
the $4 million will sit until we reach the first maturity date.
Okay.
The first of which will be October, followed by January, and then April.
And then at that point, we can just roll it, or we can take it, or
We
whatever
can
we
roll
want
it,
to do.
reinvest, yes. Also, during that time frame in February is when the 2 certificates of deposit will mature. And those are at 0.45.
But you think you're gonna need some of that?
If some of the capital projects, eventually happen, yeah, we will need some of them. Okay.
Yeah.
There are no pending, grant
I'm sorry,
reimbursements.
so we'll just keep it there, you just record the interest as
The
when
interest
it comes to
will
it, we roll
post
it, yeah.
at maturity, yes. The certificate interest posts with each month.
Right.
We bought them on the 5th, and so the 5th of every month, there is interest that is accrued with the certificates
And
of
you report
deposit.
that as income?
Yes, and you can see that the balance has changed from June from 4,019,000, in July
Right.
it's 4,020,000, so you can see that increment each month. That will not happen with the Pliget money until we reach maturity.
Yeah, we actually don't need to plug in money, we just keep it there, it's nice to be able to see how it actually grows, and just let it there.
Any questions on cash or investments? During the month of July, not a lot of activity to report. We have additional current real estate taxes. Mostly were collected in the previous month, just not received by the borough until July. The EIT distribution totaled $131,000, additional mercantile tax of about $40,000. One receipt that was not anticipated was a state and local fiscal recovery funds. We received $1,700. What had occurred was the municipalities that did not take advantage of the availability of the funds, those funds were reallocated to those municipalities who did. So we received an extra $1,700. The second tranche has not yet been received. We were actually told to expect it sometime in July, and it has not yet.
So you
appeared.
had some communication with somebody about it?
Well, when the 1,700, when we were notified that was gonna hit our account, no one knew what it was about. So I had reached out, it took a while to get an answer, but when we did, we learned what it was about. And we asked about the timing of the second tranche, and that's what we were told, but haven't seen it yet. The first one had arrived at the end of June in 2021. As far as expenses, during the month of July, the annual payment was made to the West Side Emergency Management Agency in the amount of $22,000. That amount goes along with the population. It's $2 with each of the population counts. Insurance values were amended and resulted in additional premiums of $17,000. Do you want to comment on the insurance values?
So at the beginning of 2022, talking with Lewis about our coverages, they provided me with an Excel spreadsheet that had a statement of values for all of the insured borough facilities, buildings, and equipment. In reviewing that with the department heads, we were grossly underinsured. The police department building wasn't even covered, much less the contents of the building. The fire department, the fire station was underinsured in terms of value, and the contents of that building we were insured for maybe 10% of what was actually out there. So going through every facility, taking square footages from a facility review that Mike Cowder did for us back in 2008 to compare actual apples to apples and working with the insurance company, the statement of value went up, hence the increased premium.
Alright, also paid in July was next installment on the document library project. That brings the project to about 52% complete. Do you want to comment on
So
progress?
Tony from Scantech is coming out next week to start cataloging the next round of documents they're gonna take for scanning. Melissa and I have access to the back end that we can go in and see the things that they've scanned so far, and so far so good.
So what do they do with the documents then? Are they destroying them, or
Yes.
they're getting shredded, or?
They have to destroy them in accordance with PHMC requirements.
That's part of the contract?
Correct.
Alright, also purchased or received during July was one of the light bills, one of two, or actually they have both been received, one had previously been received. So we have the equipment to go on the new police cars, we just don't have the cars yet. In checking with John, he does anticipate one of the vehicles arriving perhaps in August, and the other one perhaps in November. But in the meantime, we have all the equipment for it.
Could we perhaps pay them to do?
Well, we had to pay for the equipment that's been received. We have not expended the cash for the vehicles yet. So comparing July to the prior Julys, you'll see that the, let's see, when we look at revenues, the revenues are total for the month of July, $1,222,000. That is less than July of the prior year, because in the prior year, we were receiving grant reimbursements for the 4th Street extension. So the revenues are significantly down. You'll see that in the year-to-date results as well. At July of '21, we had received the first tranche of the recovery funds, as well as over $1 million worth of grant reimbursements. When we look at the expenses, you'll see a positive variance because we are not expending those capital items as we had in the prior year. So on a year-to-date basis, our total expenditures are $10,542,000. Again, a positive variance year-to-date. For the month of July, the expenses exceeded revenues by $315,000.
Can you go to that slide?
I'm looking at my paper.
Yeah.
You see?
So we have time.
There we go. All right. For the month of July, expenditures exceeded revenues by $315,000. On a year-to-date basis, that brings our excess of revenue over expenses down to $3,809,000. When that amount is added to beginning fund balance, we are at a overall fund balance of $14,830,000. $1,772,000 of that is reserved for future commitments, leaving unreserved fund balance of $13,057,000. Our open permit fees that are pending totaling $28,000, which would bring our unreserved fund balance to $13,086,000. When we look at the items that are reserved, during the month of July, we added another $10,000 to the MS4 reserve. Additional proceeds from the bike share stations will add to the reserve for future bike maintenance, bringing that total to $50,000. The net change in the current year variances is a negative $35, and I have the detail for that. And at our prior meeting, we had approved $60,000 for additional water meters to be paid out of the water project that's deferred to 2023. So we look at the change.
And just for background, that water meter was done because we didn't do another water project.
Correct.
It was already budgeted for a
It was
water project.
budgeted, but the
But we didn't.
material is not available until 2023. So during the month of July, the budget variances, I recorded the additional Benetcon reimbursement for $57,000. The add alternates for the street works was approved totaling $24,000. And we were notified of additional real estate reductions totaling $23,000. As we discussed, the insurance values were amended, creating additional premium due of $17,000, and a total of $10,000 has now been expended. $6,000 have been expended in June, and the balance of $3,000, bringing the total to $10,000 for our email security project. There's also a discussion item regarding additional costs that have been identified for the pole barn. So the net expense, the net variance change for the month of July is $35,000, bringing the balance left of the table projects from the beginning of the year down to $304,000. Any question on those reserves?
One question on the insurance. Yeah, are all borough properties now up to date
It should be.
and current? Because that's kind of scary that we were undervalued
I
so
mean,
much.
yes, it's everything from the public works garage, the parks barn, this building with now the addition of the police department, fire station, the tree department, standalone buildings like the swimming pool, storage sheds, salt sheds, and then the contents of all those facilities. Vehicles are separate, that's a separate policy, but, I mean, actual building and contents. And, I mean, even I upped the coverage, just the fence. Like, the fence around the front of Borough Hall had a value of, I think, $25,000. Jim and I were talking about the one day, you know, what if something happened that like a
Somebody
car.
crash you through it or something.
Yeah, it would cost a lot more than $25,000 to replace that, so.
And I guess the
Well,
borough,
don't
or
forget-
the library is, since that's current from our transaction, recent transaction. Okay, thank you.
If someone crashes through it, that's their problem, that's their insurance.
Assuming they're insured.
Provided they stick around,
Well, if
What's
they
that?
have enough,
provided they stick around.
Or
Well,
they
that's
have
true.
insurance.
well, their
I
policy,
wouldn't.
their policy limits could be too low.
Yeah.
So capital expenditures for the month of July totaled only $25,000. As I indicated before, we made the next installment on the library documentation project, the radio and light bar for one of the vehicles. One of the trackers also arrived, and that was $1,400. Those are the only capital expenditures in July, bringing the year-to-date total to just $467,000 of the $4.8 million that's budgeted. So we are, timing-wise, we are definitely behind our spending there.
We're certainly gonna do all the street stuff, that's all gonna get paid this year.
Yes, and I have updates on those projects as well. On the street work during the month of July, the infrastructure committee approved application number 1, in the amount of $209,414. That is pending council's approval for payment next week. Application number 2 has also been received for work through July 31st. That will bring the project to 41% complete with a 10% retainage, and the payment that will be approved in August, an additional request for payment has been made in the amount of $277,000. That is pending the infrastructures committee approval in August, followed by council's approval in September. So these payments will be made, they're just delayed in timing versus comparisons with prior periods. The first application has been received for the sewer work for the current year. The contract had been awarded to Sewer Specialty Services in the amount of $304,000. The first application brings the project to 27% complete, and they are requesting payment in the amount of $74,244. That is pending the infrastructure committee approval later this month. When you compare the $304,000 to what had been budgeted at $400,000, you'll see that it is $95,000 under budget. However, during the budgeting process last year, the committee approved Jim to proceed with other capital projects that were related to sewer. Most of them have been completed at this time, with the exception of there's a backup pump that has been ordered. It was actually ordered in November of '21 for the Berkshire Boulevard pump station. And that has not yet arrived, and that's about $20,000, but it's included in that $95,000. So really with the additional projects that Jim has completed, plus the addition of the contract, we will come in pretty much right on budget.
Speaking of which, I guess, when is the budget process gonna start, or when do you think?
When I have August results, I send out the work papers to the department heads to have them start working on their requests for the next year. So, I'll be working on gathering all that information in September, and it's usually early October where we have our first meeting.
Thanks.
Any questions on any of the expenditures, capital projects? No? Okay. On the revenue side, the tax collector reports collections during the month of July of 90,000. That will bring the year-to-date total to 4,273,000, leaving 275 uncollected at the end of July, or about 6%. So we are running about 2% behind where we had been in previous periods. Of the 90,000 collected by the tax collector, the borough received 25 of that in the month of August, and you'll see that as an August receipt. That together with what was received in July that had been collected in June, the gross tax collected was $412,000. When that amount, I'm sorry, you have a
I was
question?
gonna say, if, we're behind last year, is there any analysis ever done, and it takes time, is it the same, same individuals not paying taxes, or is it?
I haven't
property
analyzed the
growing, or-
actual property owners.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I did pose the question to the tax collector, and there was stimulus money available to taxpayers last year that they don't have this year. We won't know the true extent of it until we get to the end of December. We are in the penalty period now, so if you haven't paid during the flat or the discount period, you most likely will wait to the end of December, so taxes are not turned over to the county for delinquent collection. All right.
Could be a sign of the times.
So when you take the 412,000 and add what the county collected in delinquent taxes, what's been billed in interim, and the discounts and the penalties, the net real estate taxes for the month of July total 418,000, for the year-to-date total of 4,293,000. Again, a negative variance of 118,000 compared to the prior year. During the month of July, we were notified of additional reductions in assessed values. In 3 court orders that were dated April 12th, the Berkshire Mall West, the property where Old Navy is located, as well as Raymore and Flanagan, all along Woodland Road, the value of those properties decreased by $2.9 million. What's different about these court orders than the ones previously reported, the ones that had previously been reported, the current year tax bill had been voided and a new bill was reissued at the lower value. With these last 3 properties, the property owners had paid the current year tax, and it's recorded in current year income. The reduction therefore necessitated a refund of current year tax, as well as a refund of prior year tax, because the reassessments were actually effective in 2021. So the net refunds that were issued during the month of July totaled $23,000.
On one of those Berkshire Mall West, that assessed value should come back up. They're in the process of doing a complete facade improvement. And I was told on Monday that they're likely going to be coming into the planning commission in the next month or so with plans to do addition on the AC Moore side.
So the reductions of these most recent court orders will be reflected on, I believe, the next abstract. I won't know until I receive it from the county.
The 2% reduction in collections year to date doesn't have anything to do with the reductions.
They don't, because
Yes,
I've been evaluating our collection based on what's available to collect, not what was originally billed.
But the base is staying as it typically does, very level.
The base has.
Taxable base, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like right around $1 billion forever. Just keeps going. Yeah, some people bring it down, other people build build something that comes up, but it doesn't really cost.
We actually, with the last,
1,010,000.
with the last abstract, we actually did have an increase because
Medical school.
the medical school had been added
Right.
much later than anticipated, but that had been offsetting reductions that we have seen.
Right.
These type of things are eating away at that.
And we don't have any alerters out there anymore, right?
So the one on Wyomissing Square is,
Just starting.
yeah, as soon as the certificate of
New one.
occupancy is issued for the retail portion, the 10-year time period will start on that.
Alright. The old ones are done.
Yeah, they closed out in 2019.
Michelle, you were saying about some of the improvements they've made, the permits that were pulled, do we know what value was assigned to any of that? And
Not off the top of my head, but I can get that number for you, and I don't
Well,
know.
I'm only
I
concerned.
don't often trust the construction
Oh,
value on a
sure,
building
sure.
permit because a lot of contractors or property owners assume their reassessment is gonna be based off of that, when in reality, the assessors pulling the building permit file, looking at it, and physically going out to the site to come up with a reassessed value.
Well, then they apply the common law ratio against that stuff too.
Yes.
We can't use it as full permit price or whatever. You know, so it will have some impact, but maybe probably not a lot. I don't know. I don't know what the value of that is. I'm just curious.
I can get you an answer.
You know, is that, well, and that would start the following year.
Typically, the assessor goes out around the time the certificate of occupancy is issued, so what happens is every month, at the end of the month, we give the assessment office a copy of every building permit that was issued. It's up to them what they choose to do with it.
Sure.
They sometimes reach out and say they want additional information, they actually wanna see the permit file and the plans. Sometimes they just go out to the property and do a drive-by or a walkthrough to see what's going on. And then at their discretion, they reassess the property, typically around the time the certificate of occupancy is issued, but
Okay.
not always.
But we issue that certificate.
Correct,
It's a borough that issues that.
correct.
So at that time, then, once they get that, then they send someone out, or
No, I mean,
is it?
they're keeping an eye on it from when
or
they get a
it's-
copy.
no, it's just a-
They're keeping an eye on it from when they get a copy of the building permit, so July just closed, we send a copy of every building permit that was issued in July to the assessment office now.
Sure.
But the bottom line is that the assessed value of real estate has hovered at $1 billion for as long as I
Long
can
time.
remember, 15 years.
Yeah, though I'm worried with some of what's going on in the Wilson School District section over time. I mean, a few development or redevelopment projects in that area would certainly help pad that number.
Right. Well, you would think that it would be appreciated in some degree with just the appreciation of real estate. But we have this massive devaluation of
Yeah.
commercial
The
property.
commercial properties, yes.
And that's what's driving it, because the residential should be increasing. In a 15-year stretch where we had a housing boom, and we're
There has to be a
continuing to have a boom.
reassessment to really
There
capture
has to
it.
be a reassessment, and that's not
That's
done
the
on
problem.
transactions where the commercial ones are.
That's not permitted anymore.
Right. So how does that take place?
That's a county
County.
county commission.
County.
County.
But is it on a cycle, or is it just
No,
random?
there's a law
It's random.
that says if assessments or values, what, 60%, 75%, Chris?
Well, I'm not sure what the number is.
There's a
but-
percentage that if your valuation hits that magic number, the county by law is supposed to trigger a reassessment.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they don't
sure
do that.
they'll voluntarily initiate it and
Right.
need litigation to get that process started.
Right.
That's what happened the last time.
So that should have happened probably 10 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right. Local taxes other than real estate, the month of July totaled $198,000, bringing the year-to-date total to $4,031,000. It is a positive variance when compared to the prior year, both when considering and not considering the Equus real estate transfer tax that occurred in 2021. We look at a real estate transfer tax for the month of July totaled $28,000, bringing the year-to-date total to $410,000. Very little activity, only residential during the month of July. We have a negative variance when compared to the prior year because of Equus, a positive variance when not considering Equus. Look at earned income tax for the month of July totaled $106,000, bringing the year-to-date total to $1,885,000. a positive variance year to date over last year of 26,000. Prospects of hitting budget for EIT is fairly good, fairly good. On the mercantile tax, an additional 40,000 was collected during the month of July, bringing the total to 1,439,000, well in excess of the original budget. The remainder of the year will see very little collections. Due date has passed, so only delinquent and new businesses will be in that number. So we have hit and exceeded that budget. And yes, the inflated sales values would contribute to that.
What do you think you're gonna do for next year?
The excess is the 264?
Yes, over budget. Yeah.
What do you think you're gonna do for next year? Something in between, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do a large,
Yeah.
I mean, we were aggressive with the number we
Yeah.
chose for this year.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised to see that we got there.
I wouldn't be too aggressive.
No, that would be unrealistic, I think.
Yeah.
Lastly, with local services tax for the month of July totaled just 4,000, bringing the yearly total to 196,000. Although we are ahead when compared to last year by 19,000, we are only at 49% of the budget. Now, on the cycle, the large receipts will be in September and then not in December when we've already passed the budget. But I am concerned that we might not reach the 600,000 that we projected. That might have been too aggressive. All right. Any questions on July results? I think the next thing on the agenda is the pension. All right. Did everyone have a chance to look at the reports that Gerard distributed? There's some information about the investment allocation. What you see in front of you is the police. But I do have a summary at the end of this. There we go. So we started the year with total plan assets of $32 million. Contributions thus far total 256,000. Withdrawals, which include benefit payments as well as fees, total 1,011,000. The big hit there is the loss to the investment values of over 19% at 6,210,000. So the current asset values total 25,732,000. So, as we were discussing before the meeting, the next plan valuation is scheduled for January 1st of 2023. If the market does not recover before that time and the assets are valued at a reduced total, it will not affect the 2023 MMO because that's based on the current valuation, but it will be detrimental to the 2024 and the 2025 MMO requirements. Unless you have a crystal ball, I really don't have much to add to that.
Nothing we can do about it.
Get the dice out. Yeah, that's not good.
Next on the agenda is a request from Four Park Plaza for some relief on their,
Was there any analysis given as to the ratio? No. Right. So, I mean, that's what really matters.
yeah,
Are we,
Too early.
Yeah.
we
And it's
soon,
already recovered about 5%.
Yeah, exactly, so.
we soon do from other interest? Production.
we could, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
3 years.
There's a plan
We
to
could.
reduce.
Oh, yes, I know what you mean.
Which impacts our
Yeah,
rate,
yeah,
yes.
which could impact on top of this.
On top of it,
Well, I just wanted to.
that would
put out.
compound it, yes.
Do you want the one that's set? So I just,
It's-
sorry guys,
It's
just
not set in stone.
talking about the interest reduction that we have planned occasionally,
Right.
that we assume, which
Assume
would,
rate
would
return.
even compound those numbers if the investment losses don't recover. And we reduce the interest rate, that even increase jacks up again the amount we have to
Yes, that will
contribute. So
compound.
that
in
could be
market.
compounding the situation.
Are we on an automatic did we?
No,
No,
that is
automatically
initiated
drop
by,
it.
Right. But we had talked about possibly,
the salary
Ratio will
scale
be-
is already on target. We've already achieved that, but we still have a little.
Something to think about.
You're referring to the assumed rate of return.
Yes,
in
yes,
the
yes,
sentence, right?
yeah.
And what are we earning at? 6.5?
We reduced it.
We have reduced it twice already. I think we're a half a point away from where our target was.
Right.
I will confirm that information. I haven't looked at that for a while.
Phil, is there a process called smoothing that can be applied?
Yeah, it's stretching the amortization period.
There is.
Everybody's living, well, I think worse.
Well, that's a way.
The actuarial table makes it worse.
But we're trying to do the opposite of that, though. I mean, we've been aggressively addressing this for 10 years, adding to the plans and lowering the assumed rate of return. And smoothing is like a.
It goes against that, but it's just, you're talking about the long-term consequences of a short-term drop in the market.
Right.
And the smoothing.
It's the same exact thing that happened 2 evaluations ago, right?
Correct.
We had a horrific end of the year, and a month later we recovered, but we were paying.
Yeah, the MMO system, the process of the delay that we're gonna look at this year's
Right.
downturn, it's not gonna affect next year's number. It's 2 and 3 years from now that we're gonna have to make
Correct.
an adjustment in our MMO,
Yes.
which is strange.
Do you want to talk about?
Sure. Fort Park Plaza received, do you have that screenshot? Thank you. Received an unusually high water bill of $23,534. They did pay it. Jim went out, tested the meter, found absolutely nothing wrong with it. They had a plumber come in, couldn't find any leaks or anything else. What they're requesting is the late fee, which is typically, correct me if I'm wrong, 10% of the amount billed. Which in this case, roughly $2,300. They're requesting that late fee be waived.
So they're not requesting relief from the charge, they're
Correct.
requesting. So if I read the background on it, they disputed it immediately.
Yes.
So this is the same precedent I think that we've had in the past, which is they tested the meter is what it is, they've got to pay the water bill. But just like we've done in the past, if they dispute it immediately, while it's in investigation, I think it's only fair that you waive the penalty.
Agreed.
So-
It's also similar to what we did for Mr. D'Oliva.
Exactly. So I don't think there's any new precedent being set. It's the same as been done before, and because they raised the issue, it was during the period of investigation. So, I mean, my feeling, I would feel comfortable waiving the penalty, but
That's a
obviously
motion, I'll second it.
And they have since paid,
It was paid back in May.
yeah.
they just didn't pay the penalty.
Correct.
Yeah, I would make that motion that we relieve them of the penalty. And there's a second from Greg. All in favor? Opposed? So, we can tell them that. But we have no idea what it caused. They don't know, we don't know. So we don't see too many of those.
That's a
There's
big
gonna be
increase,
sorts
too.
of
I had
questions
one of
about.
those years ago.
Yes.
At my own
That
place.
wasn't a little electronically read.
I'm sorry?
They're electronically read.
I don't know if that's one of the new ones or not. So we've not upgraded all meters in the borough to the new Lenigan electronic readable ones. We're in the process of doing that. But I'd have to confirm with Jim if this is one of the new ones or not.
I'm curious if the electronic ones can be hacked.
That's a interesting way to mess with somebody.
Well, or do they need to be calibrated every once in a while, or are we calibrating?
These drop magnets all the time.
Yeah. But I'm not sure.
Because those are the Lenigan.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Parks Department pole barn.
I'll take this one too. Since Dan's departure, Jim has taken over, supervision overseeing the pole building project for the Parks Department. The signed contract with, Pioneer Pole Buildings was for $250,000. That included $30,000 for electric, which Jim is recommending we delete from the contract, which would bring the new contract price to $220,000. The reason for that recommendation is he can get from $35,000 from Twyford Electric, better quality insulation and higher quality fixtures. We're getting more bang for our buck and for only 5,000 more, plus doing it through a contractor Jim has experience with and trusts. So, in addition to the 35,000 for electric, there's a quote from the Worco Group, who Jim also has a lot of experience with, for 8630 for plumbing, separate 8850 for HVAC. We're estimating about 5,000 for stone pipe materials for stormwater management and some interior work we need to do to get the subfloor ready for the contractor, which brings the total cost out to about $277,480. We originally budgeted $150,000 for this year, and then I came back to the finance committee in February, and council approved their recommendation to add another $115,000 based off of costs that were not taken into consideration or presented to the finance committee during budget talks last year. So we're not that far off. We're looking at 265 versus 277. I don't know that the 25,000 additional is actually going to be necessary, but it would be nice to have a little bit of padding if need be, knowing what's going on with material availability, inflation costs, etc. If the finance committee is so inclined to make the recommendation, once approved by council next week, Jim would sign the contracts with Twyford and Warco. Chris, him and I agreed the Warco contracts, each individually under 10,000, not subject to bidding. Electric at 35,000.
Yeah, that, I'm concerned about that. The existing electric was what, through the,
Contract with Pioneer.
and was Pioneer, did we do advertised bidding or was that a cross?
It was a CoStarz purchase.
Okay. So we'd have to do a change order with them to take the electric out, and we would have a whole different electrical contractor for the project. I don't see how you do that without bidding. So, I mean, unless somehow they were CoStarz eligible.
Twyford,
Yeah,
I'd
I
have
mean, if the new contractor is CoStarz, we can do it without public bidding. But if it's not CoStarz, we have to bid that
I'll
new
have-
electrical contract.
talk to Jim about that.
So do you wanna find that out before next Tuesday?
Yeah, I can
Council
find that out.
meeting, find out whether they are co-stars or not. If not, then you gotta put it out for bid.
You,
They have
And he's
to,
gonna have to write specifications, specific specifications
for that building,
for that building with those new fixtures
Yeah.
included and so on.
yeah.
Jenna was asking if the general contractor could swap out at our request the subcontractor on electrical and bring it under their CoStarz. I don't know if that's an option, but that's something that maybe
Ask,
you can ask.
Cause then it would be under the one umbrella for the whole project.
Yeah. But it still, it would have to be CoStarz eligible in some fashion in order to avoid public bidding. It's too much money.
So to keep the project moving along, do you need something from this committee to tentatively approve the increase in the budget? Because it looks like we approved $265,000 so far for the project, and you're requesting an additional 25,
up to 25.
up to 25.
You could approve the increase in project cost, subject to working through the mechanics of putting it into effect.
Okay. Do we
I
have
would say not to exceed 20.
Yes,
the addition?
Yeah,
So it's 265 plus the
Yeah.
25. Do you have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second? That's motion and a second to approve up to $25,000 for the project, additional project for the pole barn, pending the outcome of understanding the mechanics of how to function that through the bidding process. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Guys have it, so work through the issue. Is there any old business? New business? Janet, do you want to address your Parks and Shade Tree issue about the study. So, I didn't answer you, there's too much to type.
No.
Why don't you just, give, we're not amending the agenda because we're not gonna do anything, so we can still have a
So
discussion.
If there is a statement to be made, that doesn't require an agenda change. But if there's discussion on the topic, then we need to add that topic to the
So
agenda.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to include discussion regarding a Parks and Shade Tree Committee recommendation to the Finance Committee for discussion. We have a second. All, do we have a comment there?
After it's approved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I don't think there's gonna be any action, but I think it's a discussion.
That's fine,
Uh,
you're safe.
Public comment.
All right, now we have public comment.
Again, objection for not knowing what this is about is not on
It's
the
about
agenda.
a discussion about a recommendation that's being made by the Park and Shade Tree Commission. I don't know what it is either.
Well,
That's
that's
why we're gonna have a
I think,
discussion.
and that's the point.
That's why we're gonna have a
I
discussion.
understand.
We
But
can't have
the-
a discussion if
the-
we don't have an amendment, so now
Correct.
we're having a discussion. So now you're
But-
gonna find out what it's about the same way I'm gonna find out what it's about.
That's correct.
Okay?
But the thing is, I cannot comment until I find out, correct?
I can't comment either. We're
Well
having a
then,
discussion.
then there's no point in asking for comments
All right,
before
well,
we don't even know what
Okay,
the
then
heck
we'll
is
move
about.
on. Then
So-
we'll move on. Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, at yesterday's Park Shade Commission meeting, described a very productive meeting that she and Dwayne.
Jim was there too.
Had with,
Larry Lloyd, who's the senior ecologist from Berks Nature, and Jeremy Haymaker, who helps out with, some of their land management, for lack of a better description.
and they recommended a sort of a study of the park system. And if you could give it's very extensive, and I think if people would understand how different kinds of portions of that study, the amount of money would make sense.
So Berks Nature manages, Neversink, Onalani, Antietam Lake, as well as, there's a Fleetwood Forest I didn't know existed. What they've done for a lot of these properties is put out an RFP to work with a consultant to come up with effectively a land management plan. Some are called a forest stewardship plan. So I reached out to them to see if they'd work with us or give us advice on our parklands, and I mean, that's an answer came back, they don't do that specifically. There's, the RFP process that they've gone through to find a consultant to work with them. The plan typically covers everything from historical information, how did the land come to be preserved, who donated it, what deed restrictions are on it, any type of, floodplain, are there other considerations, breaks it up into zones, I'm thinking like the Parks Barn, the Enchanted Forest would be a zone, the Stone House would be a zone, different areas of the parklands would be zones. You then create, the topo maps, the elevation maps, everything that goes along with mapping out what's in each location, and you come up with long-term management plans for everything from deer to invasive species to how do you want your public access, where do you want your parking. Knowing some of the issues of our parklands, invasive species, deer getting used more heavily in the past couple of years since COVID, knowing that we have issues with the Enchanted Forest, we have trees that are dying, I think it would be a great idea to have a plan, to move forward as to how we wanna continue to manage the park, what we wanna see it look like. Additionally, if there's budget considerations to take into place, that plan will spell out, okay, over the course of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, this is what you need to budget to be able to accomplish X at the end of it. So my request to Park and Shade was to make a recommendation to finance to consider putting funds into the 2023 budget to put an RFP out that I will write, to work with a consultant to prepare a plan for the parklands.
And my request was, I don't know whether there's money this year to do it, but it seems to me that this study is key to making plans in the future. And whatever that study says is going to require a lot of discussion. So I'm hoping that we can start sooner rather than later. And
if we have money that is not spent, we do that in different ways, like the recreation board, not that we have money.
But yeah, that was your question.
Yeah.
It's really not there.
It's not their money, but it's,
Right.
it's
If it's a
available
justified
money.
expenditure,
Yeah, and, you know, the rec board has certainly an interest in the park system as well, but it seems to me with Dan leaving, there's money that is there that is not likely to be spent. I think some revenues are up, but we're only looking for 20,000. And it is a key to getting so much done in the future that I'm hoping that we can do it sooner rather than waiting for next year.
is the 20,000 then for the initial study?
Yes.
Or is
For the
that
study.
for ongoing?
That would be to pay the consultant for the study.
So I guess,
And it's a key also to getting grants.
Well, I didn't know this conversation would take place, but
none of us did.
there was another part to the conversation, which was the subject of the parks person that we're trying to bring on board. Defining what a parks person does would have been a good start, which I asked Michelle, and Michelle said she's going to be working with personnel, somebody to develop a job description for that person.
The job description actually pretty much exists. It was part of Dan's description. It's just taking out the rec director and adding in whatever we want additional responsibilities to look like.
Yeah, I guess
Well,
that,
what I'm trying to say is, there's a cart and there's a horse. If we have a study done, it would be helpful if that study was done in conjunction with the new parks person, so that that person can bring, hopefully, if you get a parks person, they may have a lot of this experience that you're paying for up front. Because if you don't hire a parks person that does all that, all the discussion about upgrading the parks operation would be for naught.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that was-
respectfully
I
disagree with that statement
I
in
disagree
that
with that too.
Berks Nature has a staff of at least 15, including a senior ecologist, who, this is their bread and butter, and they had to hire a consultant to do the study.
Yeah, there's no way everyone we hire is going to have.
If anything,
significant
I think
input.
this gives them a great roadmap to come in and hit the ground running.
well, they would obviously need to be part of
Yes.
that process.
Right.
You know, so where are we with that? Where are we with the decision of one person, two people, part-time versus full-time? I forget.
Personnel needs to decide what they wanna do with this.
They still haven't had that.
No.
And when is that?
Next personnel meeting's in not next week, the following week.
I would think what we need to do is we need, you know, in terms of, it sounds like something that needs to be done. I think what has to be done is, it has to go to, probably as part of the Park and Shade Tree report, a recommendation to council, and then go back to finance. Based on that, I would think that a presentation of some sort beyond just what you just said, either maybe some slideshow of some sort, or something, whatever it's called. You know,
PowerPoint?
some PowerPoint,
show.
PowerPoint. I guess it just needs further explanation.
We're gonna have
It needs,
to
it needs.
for gender.
And I can share with council and
PowerPoint.
finance, I have links, Jeremy actually sent me multiple plans that they have for different properties. So I mean, I can share them if you want a good idea of
I
what
just
those
think
plans look like.
Council needs to understand what the potential project is and make a decision based on that, not necessarily. It has to be a financial decision, but it also has to be a justification in terms of the process and what it would look like. And in Ron's point, it obviously would be good if we've already decided we're either gonna hire a full-time or part-time person for that position and get them involved in the process.
Well, on the other hand.
Not saying that that's in place of, but as part of the process.
But Michelle, I think, knows from talking to those folks what needs to be in this plan,
Okay.
so.
I think I
can't
have everything to
imagine-
rate the RFP, and I mean, keep in mind, we did the RFP for the master plan city for Park and Penn. We put specifically in there, cost not to exceed X, this is everything we wanna see, this is how we want the information, like, we wanted it all electronic for that study, no hard copies. So,
I would think it just has to be brought to full council based on Park and Shade Tree recommendation.
Well, the
Right?
recommendation
Are we on the
was
right
to
track
put it
here?
in next year's budget, and my
Well-
question was whether there's money this year to start it earlier, because
Well, how soon could they start?
Well, I
Well,
mean,
then
so
should
first
we
I
do
have to
RFPs
write
and-
the RFP
Right. I mean,
and
Yeah,
put it out.
and
You brought up a
and that's the
very good
important
point.
part, right there. I mean, the reason for that, what's a narrative? You know,
Right,
what benefit are we gonna get out? You know, then,
right.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle brought up a very good point, that, you know, we spent $65,000 on a, economic development, you know, plan for Penn Avenue and for Park Road. Because, yeah, we have all this, but what do we do with it? Same thing, I mean, we have a
Right.
gorgeous park system, one of the best in the county, if not the best, that is an attraction. And, yeah, we need, I think we need, professional help, you know, in managing that.
So I would say, you know, let's just bring it to council as a recommendation for a project. And the answer is yes, we can find money to do that. If the council agrees that it's a necessary project, go ahead.
I do agree though that we need to find, if we're gonna hire a person, one person, two people, whatever that is, that individual coming in has the experience and knowledge of invasive species and,
Right.
you know, park system, trees, you know, whatever. Because they can't perhaps write the study, but will know how to maintain it and, you know, I don't know, I just,
That's why I
we're
say,
gonna
I
do
think,
this.
I think those two things have to be in conjunction,
Yeah.
not necessarily timing wise, but they certainly need to be part of each of the project.
We
They
had
have to
that,
be part of the issue.
yeah, we had that lady,
Lucy,
yes, and, who was quote,
weed wrangler.
export in, you know, invasive species. And, from what I understand, did a wonderful job helping to start to clear things out. But it needs to be an ongoing process.
Okay?
And then there are a lot of people who are not expressing an interest in volunteering, but if we had different areas blocked off and could assign responsibility, that would be very helpful.
But then that
Right.
also comes back to somebody to manage it,
Yes.
which would be.
Well, we don't have that yet,
Right.
but we need this, the study to me is the key to everything, so thank you
So
for allowing
that's
me,
the- that's
thank you
the-
for allowing me to have a
So
discussion.
that's the process.
Thank you.
Any other new business? If not, we need an executive session.
I don't foresee any action coming out of executive session.